Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
All right. Welcome to today's show. I have Jimmy Allen from Jimmy Allen Coaching. He was recently named the top 10 male coaches from the Coach-Entrepreneurial Mogul magazine. Cannot say that word. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
I am good. Thank you. So I just wanted to start by saying Jimmy is a great coach. I was actually one of his, when you needed your practice sessions to get certified as a coach, I was one of the guinea pigs.
Practicum clients.
Yes.
You're one of my, I guess, testing or for my training.
Yeah. And I thought he was great. And then now I see he's was named a top 10 coach, and he's been awesome and on Instagram and all the places, all the socials. So you guys can check him out. And it's, if you could say your website or your socials too, it's at Jimmy Allen.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Jimmy Allen, and my website is Jimmy Allen Coaching. And you can find all, like in my bio, my Instagram, you'll find all the socials.
Cool. Yeah. And since I'm new at this and he's been doing this forever, I actually asked him. It sounded overwhelming at first to start a podcast. And then he told me the person he learned from, which is Pat Flynn on YouTube, and that he gives you step by step. So that was amazing. And I finally started myself. All right. So since you are a dating coach primarily, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes people make with dating?
With dating, or we talking about dating or dating profiles and all that? Well,
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Like the whole thing online. I guess start there. Like first you have to put yourself online to find people. So what are some mistakes, or what are some things you want to do to attract people?
I can go so many ways with this. Gosh. I'm thinking the first thing that comes to my mind, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to go online.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too. Like,
yeah, it's 2021, and if you're not going to actually put yourself out there like, old school way, then online is ready to go. And if we're going to start here, that particular I don't want to go online is a disempowering belief. So it's people's way of pushing love away, saying, well, I'm not going to do this. It's like, to me, you're not being open to the possibility of experiences. Online is a way for people to connect. It's not going to go anywhere. And if the online is not your thing, it's fine. Then you have to learn how to, another thing that people get caught up is have conversations, say hello to people. Like I live in New York, and like, I think people look at me strange when I say hello, how are you, nice shirt. Like they're like kind of like scary away, but it's like scurry away. But if online is not your thing, then a lot of people have to practice courage. A lot of people have to be open to having conversations with different people, putting themselves out there in a way that's going to allow conversation. I had a client who didn't want to go online. I said, okay, well, he was going through these speed dating events, and he was always being put in the friend zone. And so when I was like, well, can we just practice a conversation? Like, tell me what happened in the speed dating thing. And he told me what he said to this woman. I was like, dude, you're literally reading off your resume. That's boring. Like, like nobody wants to hear your resume. It's so boring. Like, you're not being curious about the woman. You're not asking her any questions. Like, people, that's another mistake. Like, people don't ask engaging questions that allow for engagement, curiosity. There's a lack of curiosity in conversations nowadays. Like, we just stick to the basic question, what everybody is saying. That's the other mistake. Like, people, like, where are you from? What do you do? Like, everybody's asking that question.
Yeah, especially online. Like, that's how you start the conversation. Like, that's how you get matched and how you actually communicate and learn about each other. Yeah.
Right. It's like, how are you going to stand out from everybody else who is asking the same question? And a lot of, particularly women, get bombarded with so many messages, and, a lot of men complain, like, well, she didn't write me back. But I said, well, show me what you wrote. And I guarantee you what you said was boring. You're saying the same thing that these hundreds of guys are saying. How are you going to stand out? How are you going to be different? Why are you asking this basic question? People, there's a reason why you put a profile picture and you write things on your profile. So the person, another mistake is people don't write anything on their profile. I don't get it. That's what the space is for.
Yeah.
So you can give information to the person, hopefully be curious enough about, oh, I see that you studied in Spain. To me, that's a great opening line. Like, hey, I think you're cute or pretty. No, it's like, wow, you studied in Spain. Can you please tell me more about that? Because one of my dreams is to go to Spain and be there for, that's one of my dreams. Like for a month, I want to go on vacation now. Like I love that. So when you start off with that specific, that shows the person that you are paying attention, or you are being curious enough to see that a question what they wrote on their profile that was so specific. And I say this too to anybody who is dating or have a dating profile. Don't write generic, basic stuff. Write very specific things so that person can be curious about who you are. So when they write you, you know that they're paying attention to what you are writing or saying.
Yeah. And then if you also say what you're looking for, not like, the whole list of 25 things. I've heard that complaint from guys, where like women will say, I want this, 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 and this, and like all these lists of stuff. But if you just say at least a few basic things of what you're looking for, you can see if you fit and you'd be a good match, like more easily.
Right. Yeah. And don't write like, I get that. A lot of women, all of us have lists. But to be honest, like no one person is going to fit all those things on your list. You start with your top 3. Like, what are your top 3 non-negotiables? Mm-hmm. Like, especially, and be very specific, because, people say, and I want to go trying to figure out what way I'm going to go. So, if you're a family-oriented person and you want children, you want to get married, say that on your profile, because believe it or not, a lot of women and men do not want to get married and do not want kids. So you don't want to find yourself in a situation on a date and you're falling in love and they say, oh, I don't want to have kids, I want to get married. Then now you're like disappointed and you're, and you're let down. Because if that's a non-negotiable for you, then, you're
don't have to waste time.
I don't want you wasting your time.
No.
Yeah, it could be a waste of time. I say no date is a waste of time. Everything I go in, I tell people, every person that you meet is a learning experience to teach you, to grow you, and show you where you have grown and where you have not grown. No date is a waste of time. That's my belief. Yeah. You may be triggered. If you are triggered on a date, there is that moment is telling you where you need to grow. But again, going back to the family-oriented thing, and there was a video that went viral by this B. Simone. She's like this big influencer and stuff like that, and she said it best. She was like, if you want a family-oriented person, then and your family is a mess, then you need to get your family life together, because this is a very tricky one. This is where I say hire a coach or go to therapy, because if I am like, and this was me. I want somebody who is family oriented. Yet I was not close to anyone in my family. I never called them, never texted them. I wasn't close with my mom at all. So how is it that I'm going to demand something from someone when I don't even know how to do that for myself?
Yeah.
So I had to go to work on my, right. I had to go to work on my own family. I had to really have difficult conversations, particularly with my mother, and clean a lot of things up, restore, I guess I'll use this word, integrity, and love and affinity with my family in order to create that. Because if I don't know how to create a family dynamic, then I don't know how I'm going to do that with someone else. How am I going to fit into that person's life who family is important when I don't know how to cultivate my own family. Even if you cut your own family off, let's say something happened or your parents or whatever passed away, God forbid, your immediate family is where you go to work as well. Like, how are your relationship with them? Are they deep relationships or are they on the surface? Like, you want to look at your immediate family. Are you having deep, intimate conversations? You want to start there, because how you do, and it always happens. How you are in one relationship is how you're going to be in the other one. Like, if you don't have deep, intimate, great relationships now, that means you don't know how to cultivate that or grow that. You're expecting the other person to be all these things for you. And that's a lot of pressure on someone. That's why we have family and friends, because, your person is not going to be everything for you. It's unrealistic and it's a lot of pressure. And then, I remember when my second boyfriend, when he said this to me, and it really threw me. He was like, I want you. He said, I want you. I don't need you. I want you. And people get very offended when someone says that. And I had to do my own research and ask my married friends. And he was like, one of my best friends, he was like, well, there is a difference, and I actually quote this article that I read on that, and saying needing and want is two different things. When you need someone, that means you need them to be something for you that you are not. And you never want to be that, because when that person gets tired of trying to be all the things you want for them and they don't want to do that anymore, then the relationship goes south.
Yeah, actually,
when
I just
didn't want it to be
good.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was gonna say
No, just when I'll finish this up.
Okay, you go first. Go ahead.
No, when you want to be with someone, you just want to be with them for who they are and nothing else. You don't need them for anything. You're whole and complete with or without them.
Yeah, I was gonna say I totally agree. And I did an episode. The last one was attachment styles, and there's anxious attachment style and avoidant. And the anxious is pretty much like a needy person, and you just feel
Right.
that neediness from the person when they need you versus wanting. And I'm, as independent people, that's what, no one needs anyone if you're independent, successful, but you want a companion, you want someone in your life. So, sorry.
Right. And that's also too, like, independent person too can also get caught up in like, well, I'm busy, I'm independent, I don't need anyone, by nature, like biologically, we are hardwired to need each other, to cultivate love. Like we're born. Like, if you think of a baby, a baby cannot survive without touching, smelling. Like, you have to, like, by nature,
Social connection.
we are created to social connection. We need that. Connect. We need connection by design. We need connection to survive. And so, sometimes, being an independent person or entrepreneurs get caught up in, work and work and work. It's like, okay, and now then they start to neglect the relationship. They start to neglect love. They start to, push love at bay, and they start using their job as an excuse to keep love at bay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because they don't know how to cultivate, and this person is needing them, wanting them, because they want to connect. You're in a relationship with someone, you're married, they want to connect with you. That's why they got married to you. That's how they want to be with you, because I want a partner to connect with.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and that's a lot of underlining things, people don't deal with. And I would say that's the other mistake that people make is a lot of, and I was one of these people too. We don't deal with our past relationships. We don't heal from past traumas. We take our trauma into relationships. We lead with our traumas. We lead with our pain, and we bring that into. That's why people say, well, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want that. And so
it's all triggers
it's like,
from the
for
past.
me, exactly. You're leading from the past. Like, I recently was dating someone, and like, all this trauma, like, brother was murdered, father tried to kill him, and all these things. Like, people don't think that these past issues don't affect them in relationship. They do. Because what happens is, in those moments, in those traumatic moments, in those breakups, we say things. And we say things, we say these things like they become declarations. I don't want to get hurt again, which translate into when you start to date again, you start to look for the problem instead of you start to look for what's wrong instead of what's right. So sometimes people, when they start dating or looking for love again, they look for what's wrong so they can avoid being hurt again. But in reality, there is no such thing as being hurt again. Like, even when you in a good relationship, you're bound to going to say something that hurt each other, and you can't avoid it because it's a part of growth. It's a part of life, and it's a growing moment. And I was trying to teach someone this. I was like, relationships are going to go through issues. You are going to fight. You can't avoid it. Even in a good relationship, you can't avoid it. And if you can accept that part of relationship, and that part of a relationship is there to grow both of you. And if both persons in the relationships, whether it's dating, even if it's 2 weeks, there is a lesson to be learned in every single interaction with the people that you're with, every single one. And if you don't ask the question, what is this here to teach me? You will miss your opportunity to grow, because guess what? If you miss that opportunity for growth, you're going to attract the same person, and the same lesson is going to happen over and over and over again until you learn that lesson. That's one of the reasons why people keep attracting the same person over and over again. I had a person said, she was introduced to me, and she's like, why do I keep tracking fuckboys? And I said, well, why do you keep saying yes to them? And she looked at me, and I said, yeah, something about you are attracting them. That's what you are giving off. Yeah. And if you don't figure that out, you're going to always attract them. You're going to always say yes to them. You have to figure out why you're saying yes to them. There's a lesson that you need to learn, and you haven't learned it. That's why you keep attracting them. It's something about you, the way you, even if I talk, dress, walk, all of it, it's about your energy, your vibe you're giving off is what's attractive. And whatever you resist persists. You're resisting this. You hate this. When you resist it, the more it keeps coming to you. Universal law. Whatever you resist persists.
And I was going to say too, and that's fine if that's what you want, but if it's not what you want, that's what you're talking about. Like if you want just fun and casual relationship, obviously, and because a lot of my idea for having the podcast is to normalize sex, and the double standard of women shouldn't like sex as much as men, which is obviously debunked at this point. But what you're talking about, when you want a relationship and you're attracting people that don't want a relationship, that to go to work on that.
Right.
I just want to make that
even
point.
Sex, like sometimes I think, particularly both men and women, like I did this sort of recently, research interviewing different people. And one of the biggest mistakes that, in this particular research, I was interviewing men, but women do this too. They're not upfront with themselves about sex, about how they want sex. And this one guy, he said, I regret. He said, and I said this recently to the group of guys who were talking about sex and stuff like that. I said, whatever is your deepest desire, that is what's going to always pull on you. So if you want to be in an open relationship, or if you don't want to be in a relationship at all, and you're lying to yourself and trying to keep this woman or man and locking them down, then if your deepest desire to have sex with multiple people, even if you lock this person down, that hunger for wanting to be with other people is always going to be in the forefront. Like, it is going to gnaw at you. And the one guy, he said, I regret not being honest with myself. I ended up cheating over and over and over and over on my wife. And I did not want to get married. Because the only reason why I got married is because she was pregnant. And he was like, even though she was pregnant, there was no reason that's not what I wanted. I only did it because of that.
Yeah.
And so you have people and be upfront about, I want to be in an open relationship. You
Yeah,
know,
there's a
a
lot
lot of
more
women,
people.
I think,
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think there's a
right,
lot more people into that than admit or know themselves. Like someone mentioned when I was on a date that he was polyamorous, and when he described it originally, I didn't know what it was. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing, actually. Like, I just like the
right,
idea of dating more than one person too. And it works better because
right,
my last episode, I talked about you're distracted between two people. You don't have to focus all your time and energy and obsess over a person and wait for their texts all the time. If you're dating more than one person, you can spread the wealth. So,
right. I mean, I don't think there's nothing wrong with it depends. Every individual is different. You know what I mean? Like, you can date more than one people. I just say be upfront. And I think too, like, I think sometimes women in particularly, I think sometimes get upset when they see guys dating multiple people in the very beginning. It's like, you're dating. Like, people date
yeah,
multiple people unless there's a conversation had. Like, I don't date multiple people. Okay, that's great for you, but I do. You know what I mean? You can't
yeah,
get upset. The other person, like, they're trying to weigh their options. Like, you
yeah,
cannot think that you're the only one they're dating, because they're trying to figure things out. Like, this is maybe new, maybe upfront, and it's good to be upfront. Like, there's no one thing like to leave shame out of it. Like, shaming the other person for dating or having sex with other people. Like, it's to be expected unless there's a conversation
yeah.
had. Like, I think
Unless you say you're
a lot of
exclusive, you're not
people
exclusive.
exactly. A lot of people don't have are afraid to have these conversations. I used to be that person too. I think recently this person I was recently dating thought was we were in a relationship. It was like, well, one, we never talked about relationships, never. And when we did talk about relationship, like it was just like, you know, temper tantrum. It's like, well, you know, keep your shame at the door. Like, you have courageous conversations.
Yeah.
Have them all, sex, marriage, all of them. Like, and you can't get upset though for some person's view of what they want. You let them get it out. Everybody gets it out. That way you can say yes or no. Make it easier for yourselves. Have all the conversations from the very beginning. Like, we're afraid to bring up sex. We're afraid to bring up marriage, bring up, like, how's your relationship with your mother and father? That's important to know. How is your relationship with your parents? For me, I want to know. Like, do
Yeah.
you have a good relationship? Because it tells you a lot of information. Even if the
Yeah.
parents were deceased, how is your relationship with your family?
Yeah. Or
If they have
siblings as
kids,
well.
how are their relationship with kids?
Yeah.
Right.
Kids for sure.
It's important. Yeah, it's important to know. And how, there's a woman, her name is Amy Webb. I think she did a TED Talk, and she was very specific. She said she wanted a Jewish man, but not a non-practicing Jewish man. That's very specific. I want
Yeah.
to Jewish, but non-practicing, non-religious person. That is very specific.
Yeah. And you might not get as many like
She
hits
wants
on the online profile, but if it's what you want, get the less often responses, but you're getting the ones you want.
right. And the thing is, you don't want everybody. Even when, like, and that really hit me when I started to develop my vitiligo. And I was like, I got very depressed, and I was like, oh my God, nobody's going to want me for what I look like, you know. And then my best friend, he was like, well, you don't want everybody. You want the person who is accepting and loving you for the way you are. And I was like, oh shit, like, yeah. Like, so I had
Yeah.
to learn how to accept myself. Even one of my friends who's also a dating, she's not really a dating coach, but she said this thing. She goes, oh my God, my thighs, so big. And I was like, why? Who cares? Like, the man who wants you for you, he's going to love your thighs.
Yeah. That's
Like,
like
so
probably the
you have
thing
to love the thighs. I tell people this all the time. The very thing that you hate about yourself is the very thing that somebody's going to love that thing. So you have to get over it. You have to do some work, get rid of those beliefs. Because I'm sure, like me, carrying on this high school shame and stuff like that about my body. And when I started to lose weight, so, oh my God, I'm still carrying a shame about my body. care. Like I didn't know, it was unconsciously in me. And so I was just like, oh my God, like I need to let this go. Like I have to learn how to accept all of me, because the person who I'm with is going to want all of me the way I am and nothing else.
Yeah, like I had the opposite issue. I was really skinny, and like that's like still in my mind. Like I think I'm like too skinny all the time. And obviously the guys I date are going to appreciate my thinness. I know thick is
Right.
in now and everyone's, but there's always someone for everyone. Like every type out there, there's someone that is into your type and you. I was going to ask, why do we only have, I know like 5 minutes left, but why do people generally come to you for coaching? Like what have been some issues that people seek you out for? Or what have you helped most with, like a good story, I guess, or like
Um, uh, so it varies, like a good story is, a guy who I knew from a long, long time ago, he was going through a divorce. And so he was like, I think I have a problem with vulnerability. And he had a problem with vulnerability, and, he had a problem with connecting, like really connecting with his kids. Really, a lot of issues with the divorce, like very angry, upset from the past. Like I get a lot of that, like very upset and angry people. And nothing's wrong with that. But from being hurt from their past relationships. So I help them get through that, teach them new ways of how to love, how to connect to their vulnerability, how to be vulnerable, how to connect, help him connect with his kids in a way that restored the love and affinity with his kids, because his kids were starting to go into therapy because of the divorce. And so he had to relearn how to connect with them because they were very young. And, but they really understood daddy's pain, and he didn't want to be in pain anymore around this relationship. He didn't want to be angry anymore. And a lot of that, like I said, how you do one thing is how to do the other. Like it was affecting how he and his job. He wasn't connecting with people. He had a high turnover at his corporation. And I said, and he always middle managed people. And I said, well, that's probably because of you. They're afraid to come to you. Like you're not connecting with them. You're assuming the worst already. I said, let's flip that around. So we had to sort of reprogram how he approached his employees, and relearn his employees. And then all of a sudden, his employees started to come to him, and he started to pass off more responsibility. I mean, a longer story than this, but he started to trust them again, and they felt that trust. That they even said it to him, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, he was restoring trust, and I guess I don't use this word again, integrity with his employees. So it made his job less. He didn't have to middle manage them much anymore, because he was starting to trust them, and because they felt that trust, they started to become better at their job. And even his kids, he started to trust them more. Then they started to want to spend more time with him. They started to ask for more time, even though they were with the mother most of the time. But he started to build more trust again with his family and his employees.
Yeah. So even though you're a love coach, obviously, like you said, one area affects all the rest. So he came to you for love
Right.
coaching and being vulnerable, and he could apply that to every single area of life. And, obviously at work, that's where you spend most of your time. So getting along with people at work and having trust and enjoying each other's company is awesome for everyone.
Yeah. There and at work is another form of relationships. There we have relationships at work.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you very much. I know you have to get on a call in a few minutes, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mention you on my launch day, which is September 7th. So people already be listening to this by the time this comes out.
Okay.
But I thank you very much. And I know you've been very successful, and you're like out there and doing your thing. I think you said you have already 200 and something episodes of your podcast. Do you want to talk about the name of yours?
So the name of my podcast is Crazy Juicy Love. You can find it on my bio Instagram, but iTunes, Google Play, and Anchor.
Okay. Awesome. And thank you again for being on my third episode and my feature guest, so I can promote you all the time.
Thank you. All right.
All
Well,
right,
thank you for having me so much.
no
Okay.
problem.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Frank Talk, sex and dating educates.